many professions, archaeology has a code of ethics, a little bit like the Hippocratic Oath, I guess, in the field of medicine. And you can see some of the things that have been outlined by the Society for American Archaeology here as the responsibilities of archaeologists to preserve the world's archaeological resources, prevent the destruction of archaeological sites and resources, conduct research consistent with the standards of archaeology, right? Doing it in a systematic and scientific way, and being careful and taking accurate notes and records so that even when you're gone, someone could take a look at your notes and figure out what was going on if they have to publish anything from the site or reanalyze it. To publish the results of your research, make sure you disseminate so that other people can use that information. Respect the rights of the living descendants, and to work toward future improvements and the continuity of the archaeological profession. One of the controversies in archaeology, but also in the museum world, is the notion of who owns the past. Right? That is, especially in museums. For example, in the British Museum, Egypt has sued to have the return of the Rosetta Stone, right? And as well as other Egyptian artifacts. The Metropolitan Museum in New York has been sued by Turkey to have the return of some of the things that they have on display. Were these things acquired legally or not? Should they be returned? There's many different views on it. Greece would like the return of the Elgin marbles from the Parthenon, which are now in the British Museum. And so you have different sides. On the side, let's say, of the Greeks, they would say, look, the Parthenon is one of the most important attractions and cultural sites in Greece. The facades that were taken off of the Parthenon and brought to the British Museum while Greece was under Ottoman control, even though Lord Elgin purchased these marble friezes, they should be returned to Greece because they're the cultural patrimony of Greece. The Egyptians would say same with the Rosetta Stone. This was taken by Napoleon's troops and then captured by the British. It should be returned. There are different sides to the story, obviously. So on one hand, you would have people from those countries saying, this is our heritage. It should be here where it was located. People in the British Museum might say, well, not everyone can go to Greece, and we are sort of educating the public as a whole about ancient Greek culture here at the British Museum, where a lot of people visit. So museums are sort of cultural ambassadors. They would also argue, I think, that that this material is kind of shared by the world and not just owned by specific modern countries. So this can get very obviously contentious. Countries will sometimes play hardball with each other. So when Egypt wanted the Louvre to return some Egyptian frescoes, and the Louvre was resistant to do that, the Egyptian authorities, said, well, maybe we don't need to have French archaeologists work in Egypt. And that was, sort of the card that they played, and I think they got the return of those materials. Another famous object, the famous bust of Nefertiti, has also been demanded to be returned to Egypt. The Egyptians claim, and they've got a point here, that when it was brought out of Egypt, it was brought out under kind of ambiguous circumstances, right? That is, the archaeologist who found it wasn't completely forthright with the Egyptian authorities as to what he found. Didn't show it to them, They just split the artifacts from this site based on a list. And because it was listed as something sort of generic like statue, bust, the Egyptians didn't pick to have it remain in Egypt. If they had seen it, they would have, of course, kept it in Egypt. It's in Germany now, in the Berlin Museum. Again, another artifact that is sort of, requested to be returned. Okay. Now, there's not many documentaries out there that show the way archaeology really works, the way a site works. I found one. It's kind of an older documentary about a site in England. And I also edited it down to make it a little bit shorter. It's only a half hour now. But what I think it does a good job of is showing us the final picture. Right? That is, we looked at animal bones and how they're analyzed. We looked at ceramics and stone tools and excavation data and things like that. All of those things have to be integrated and brought together to get kind of the full picture of an ancient people and an ancient site. So you really can't just focus on one form of data solely. You really, as the archaeologists, have to bring all of this together to look at the big picture, the local economy, trade, long-distance economy, technology, the organization of the society, the religion and the belief system, and the change in the culture over time. That is the only way that you can get a full picture of that ancient society. Now, the next film that you're going to watch is about an Iron Age Celtic hill fort called Danebury. This is the time period right before and then during contact with the Roman Empire. And what this film does, even though the film is a little old, I think it's from the early 80s, what it does a good job of is showing you how a archaeological site really works, right? In totem, looking at all the different parts and how they come together. So there will be a few questions on this documentary, Decoding Danebury, on the final exam next week. So take some notes. As you watch it, I have a little bit of some things to pay attention to on the outline.